Hey everyone, this is a quick update regarding my podcast. I want to thank you guys so much for being here since episode 1, and thank you for all the support that you guys have shown me, either through financially donating through the Cash App or by sharing this podcast and giving me your time and listening to it. So far we've reached 60 downloads up to date, and the goal is to get 100 downloads by the end of the month. So thank you again for all your support, and I'll see you guys in the beginning of the episode. Hey guys, it's Val, and welcome to episode 5 of my podcast, where we talk about different dynamics and romantic relationship. So for this episode 5, I wanted to focus more on the emotional manipulations that are found in relationship. In order to do that, I have invited a guest that has a background in psychology, and I'm going to let her introduce herself.
Hi everybody, my name is Chalita. I have a master's in psychology. I'm going for my doctorate currently right now. So of course, not a complete professional just yet, but we're getting there. So hopefully you'll take my advice with a grain of salt and have some consideration for it.
Alright, so from what you've experienced so far, what would you say are some of the common ways that guys manipulate their girlfriends in a romantic relationship?
Yeah, I think this is a really good question, just because there's such a power dynamic between couples. I think there's definitely been a generational shift to where there's more equality between men and women in relationships. But overall, men tend to take more of a dominant, more possessive position in the relationships in general, just straight off the bat. And so things such as power, control, or, placing limits on the relationship or on a person is stuff that really tends to pop out either early in the relationship or later on in the relationship. But it's always this underlying kind of current that I feel is going on.
You said that the men usually have that, or usually establish the dominant role in the relationship. Is that social? Is that something that is driven by society, or is it something that is driven by biology, or is it scientifically something that is made to happen, or is it technically supposed not is it not supposed to happen, but it just happened because of the society that we live in?
I think it's a mixture of a lot of things. I feel boys are kind of raised to be more of the providers of the family, right? We have all these pressures, these societal pressures that force men to be the ones that have the job to carry the bread for the family, and the women are traditionally more geared towards caretaking and being motherly and having that kind of affection. So I feel right from the get-go, straight from the bat, we're kind of forced into these categories almost. Whereas who knows what would happen if we were actually just trained otherwise to be exactly who we wanted to be. So I think there's definitely some pressure from that for sure. And then I think also just really personal decisions that we make in our lives and our personalities in general, our temperament kind of gear us more towards a more dominant or submissive kind of role.
So you're saying that there could be a point where the roles are reversed, right? So let's say the roles were reversed. What do you think would the result when it comes to relationship? What do you think the dynamics would look like then?
Yeah. I think you see it a lot of relationships where you're they're whipped, where guys are whipped in the relationship, the girls are more of the dominant figure and they kind of call the shots. And so what people label as whipped is more of just the woman happens to be more of the dominant figure in the relationship, where she kind of calls the shots. And I feel with most relationships, there is more of a dominant figure and there's more of a submissive figure. Wherever that balance is, or however much that power dynamic is completely dependent upon the relationship. But I feel there's always one person that kind of calls the shots, however much or however little.
So what are the common ways that girls or women manipulate their boyfriends in the context of relationship?
Yeah. So this is going to be a really, really easy answer to this. It's the same thing. I feel with girls and guys, they both manipulate the relationship in much of the same ways. It's just the tactics that they use are very different, So instead of using that whole power control or a dominant kind of possession for a guy in a relationship, a girl might traditionally use guilt tripping or those ultimatums in order to get kind of what they want out of the relationship. So I feel boys, girls, regardless of whoever it is, definitely manipulate relationships in the same amount and in the same ways. Just the presentation is different, for sure.
Okay, so basically it's the method that is used that is different.
Yeah, exactly. And I feel this is not talked about. I kind of did a little bit of a Google search just about dating violence in general and the kind of manipulation and abuse that's experienced. So it told me that 1 in 4 women experience some type of dating violence, whether it's physical, sexual, stalking, psychological, or emotional, and then 1 in 7 men experience that. So that's actually a lot higher than I feel like most people would think about. And I think for a lot of men, it's like underreported because, you know, men tend to think, you know, that dating violence for men like doesn't exist, you know, in general for people.
When it comes to like the manipulation in relationships,
Mm-hmm.
do you think that there is a apparent difference when it comes to verbal? We're going to like verbal abuse or and physical manipulation versus verbal manipulation.
Mm-hmm.
Which ones of the couples like, so between the guy and the girl, which one do the much of which? Because for me, I think that when it comes to physical manipulation or physical abuse, I think that the guys tend to do that more, whereas the verbal manipulation of verbal abuse, I think that the women tend to do that more. But is that correct?
I would tend to agree with you too. I think more often like that it's about that whole presentation. So right from the get-go, that societal pressure, it forces these categories for the masculine and feminine. And so for men, they're taught to be more masculine. They're taught to show their emotions through more physical acts. And so that's where you get more of that like physical aggression when it comes to dating violence. And it's the opposite for, you know, the women. They're traditionally taught, you know, to express their feelings. And so that's where more of like that emotional abuse kind of comes in on the women's end. So I totally agree with you. I see that there's definitely a correlation there for sure.
Before a person like becomes broken and everything like that, would you say that, so would you say that when it comes to like the sexual life, does the amount of partners somebody has had in the past have a negative effect on the future relationships?
I think it really just depends on the type of relationship that you're having with these people. Like, is this one of a sexual nature, or is it just kind of like casual dating, just having fun kind of experience? So it really just does depend. I will say that like starting dating early is a little bit more dangerous, not in the sense that you'll have negative experiences, but it puts you at risk towards more dating violence or the likelihood that that would occur. So like the typical age of like a physical violent experience for a person is like 15, which is ridiculous to me because it's so young. You know, we're just still learning even about our bodies still, and learning, you know, what friends to have or even the possible career choices we have. So at 15, it's already kind of changing the nature of the game for us.
Okay,
right?
So question, how early would you say is too early to start dating though? So in order to like prevent all those traumas from getting to you?
Oh man, that is a difficult question.
I mean, like ninth grade, like, you know, 8th grade?
Yeah. For me, when I think about dating and when I think about, what age do I want my kids to date? Like I think about what age is their maturity level? Because like, for me, like age is such a trivial thing. It's more about like how mature is this person? How capable are they of making like really rational decisions? You know, what's their decision making system like? And I think that's where it kind of comes into play. Typically, I'd want to say that maybe like 16 to 18 would be kind of nice.
Okay.
But I mean, even for me, I would say even extend beyond that because we just like don't know how much about our lives. We're still kind of like forming those things. I know, but I might be a little bit more conservative, you know? Like when I think back on like me at 15 trying to date, I was like, oh God, like so many mistakes. Like that was so ridiculous and I should have waited and all this stuff. So I don't know.
Okay. So question. So you don't think that the amount of partners you've had in the past can have a negative effect on like your ability to date in the future?
Okay, yes, I didn't quite answer this question fully, so let me get back to that. I think it does depend on the nature of the relationship, like I did say. So like if you're engaging in like sexual activities or sexual intimacy in any form, I think it most definitely will have a negative impact on your future relationship. And let me explain why. Because you're probably thinking like, oh, you know, she's got this really negative view of sex and you know, she's super conservative or whatever. But for me, I'm thinking more of like, how does this affect you emotionally? Like imagine giving a part of yourself to someone like every single time.
I have a question though. Okay, so is it true that so for guys, like I don't, so like from what I've been able to either experience or talk to with other guys, I don't feel like we treat sex the same way emotionally as the girls do. Because like I can talk to a girl and she feels like used or something like that after a relationship that she thought was going to last after they have sex, but like the guy doesn't feel the same way. But then you have other people that says that, oh, sex, you can separate your vagina from your emotions. So it's like, what is it like? Is there any like scientific like
Oh, that's
facts
so
that
funny.
can back this up.
Yeah, that's so funny. I was literally just talking about this conversation a couple weeks ago with my friends, and like my friends are in like maybe mid-20s to like mid-30s range, and we're still talking about this. So like this just shows like how much of an understanding like we still don't have even at that age level. And so yeah, we've noticed that there tended to be a trend for women, at least women in my group, that were like, oh yeah, like it is a lot more like emotional, even on a spiritual level in some cases. And then there was a tendency towards using, or not even using, but like wanting that sexual act for more intimacy purposes. Compared to the guys were like, oh yeah, like we use like sexual activity as a way of like bonding, but it's more of like a physical activity as opposed to like intimacy. Yeah, so totally two different ends that I found, like I noticed myself. So, and we're still trying to figure that out.
Okay, and so the amount of partner you have potentially could have a negative effect on your future relationship, especially if it's of a sexual nature.
Totally, most definitely. I think like if you're giving yourself a part of yourself away every single time, you'll have like almost like an emotional burden every single time. I like to think of it that way, especially for women. I think women are have a tendency to be like more at risk for things like that, and then especially down the road, like the number of partners, regardless of like sexual intimacy or whatever, you do have a tendency to be like at risk for developing like mental health issues. And that could be something just experiencing like sadness, not like diagnosed depression or anything, but it's the fact that it has such an impact on us. It does, because we think about like when we think about our childhood, even a lot of us are stuck with like, oh yeah, we have childhood trauma, we have family trauma, and we have things that we currently still deal with today, like dealing with like a lack of trust or someone cheating or abandonment. Those things carry over for us as well, and we didn't even engage in kind of any physical intimacy with our family members. Now we think about that in context of a romantic partner, someone you're supposed to be with for life. It's a big deal to some people, and it can totally affect the way you perceive life and perceive like people in the future.
Wow. Okay, so if we know that emotional manipulation in relationship is so terrible, why do people still stay? I thought back to this, and I think of this idea in psychology. It's called the social exchange theory. And basically a lot of people, they operate this way. When they think about a relationship, they think about costs versus benefits. Do the benefits outweigh the costs? And if they do, if there's a lot more positives in your relationship to a negative in relationship, they're going to stay. So with people in talking about manipulative romantic relationships, they think about the highs versus the lows. Like, oh man, the highs are so good, I feel like this person really loves me. Yeah, they've hit me this one time, but man, they really changed this time. So the benefits outweigh the cost. Oh, I took the hit one time, but they're never going to do that to me again. So I think about that a lot. And then I also think about, there was this one video that I saw on YouTube talking about highs versus low, and they talk about this thing called the penny theory. So in manipulative relationships, the persecutor gives a quarter to them at first, and that quarter is a really big deal because most people get nickels and dimes here and there. They have pretty good relationships, but this person gives 1,000% into that relationship for a time. So they get a quarter, and they're like, wow, I really love this quarter. But then they get that quarter taken away from them, and they get a penny. It's that first time that they get hit, and they're just like, oh man, I'm not valued, I'm not loved, maybe I should leave. But then that person gives them a dime, and they're like, oh, it's not as much as a quarter, but oh, it's so much better than that penny. And then they learn to get lower and lower things until they get pennies, and they're scraping for pennies because that's all the love that they're receiving from this person, and it's so much better than receiving nothing. And that's why they stay. It's a tough one. A lot of people fall into this. Okay, so how do you go about leaving such relationship though? Because you can't stay in it, because we already know what are the potential negative effects on you mentally and physically. So how do you leave?
Oh yeah, 100%. I say this all the time. Hurt people hurt people. The simplest advice I've always given to people, and time again, I see how people fall from that. People don't really understand that. And I think it's just setting this boundary. Like, there's a difference between love and loyalty. Like, they're two separate things.
Okay, so what is love? I always ask this question. What is love?
What is love? Man, that's like the age-old question, huh?
Yeah, okay, so let's take it to you. What is love for you?
What is love for me? Oh, Man, love for me is kind of like this conglomeration of trust, of companionship, of respect, and then just genuine likeness for a person, along with some physical attraction, of course.
Okay.
I think like it's a whole mixture of things, but ideally it's like companionship plus some kind of level of physical attraction for somebody else.
Okay, so
That's the most logical explanation.
Okay, so put that versus loyalty. So what is loyalty to you? What do you describe as loyalty?
Yeah, loyalty is reliability, and that also comes along with some kind of level of trust as well, that you have to gain. But it's that mixture of reliable and trustworthy is where that loyalty lies.
Okay, so now going back to the question, you said that most people don't go about living such relationship because it's a question of loyalty versus love. Okay, so what did you mean by that?
Yeah. So what I meant by that was you can love someone but not trust them, and to put that the separate distance between them. And so I know I kind of mentioned a little.
You can love someone and not trust them.
Oh, 100%. You can love someone. How do you do that?
Like, how am I gonna love you and know that I can trust you, but I'm still gonna love you?
Yeah. I think it's when I think back to this dilemma, I think back to like someone with an addiction. You can think of this person like they're super into an addiction, like they have no willingness to want to change. So you have to put up that boundary, that either physical distance, emotional distance, or either cutting them off completely from your life. But you can still entirely love this person, and whenever they're ready to come back, you would do anything to help them out with that. So you can love them but not trust them to know that like this person is going to hurt me and I need to separate myself from this person.
Okay. Okay, then so what are some steps that, let's say somebody that's listening right now is going through such manipulative relationship, what do you recommend them doing in order to start like making a way out?
Yeah. I think you need to remind yourself, first of all, that you're gonna have mixed feelings about this. They're totally gonna be there. Like let's just lay that down right there. There's gonna be like this fog of the relationship and of the manipulation you're experiencing, and you're gonna be going back and forth between the two. You have to analyze the relationship. You have to know like what's really happening, what is the truth, right? And so, and in doing so, you're creating this list of things that the costs outweigh the benefits. I think that goes back to that social exchange theory. And so in doing so, we do this in therapy all the time, and it's creating this safety plan. And it's asking yourself who you're going to call in this situation, where are you going to go if something happens, and where are you going to go and who are you going to call in an emergency.
Okay.
So you have to remind yourself to reach out and ask for help. That's so important, and I will not stress that enough, to always be able to reach out and ask for help, no matter who it's from or where you get it from. Make sure that you're getting it. You're going to also establish these clear boundaries and expectations for you and your partner, and you have to make sure to communicate them. Make sure to do it in a really safe place, maybe in a public space, an open place where you can...
Wait, with your partner, you said?
Yes, most definitely. If you're deciding to leave your partner because you're thinking about like leaving a relationship, you need to make sure to sit down with your partner and communicate exactly what's been going on, how you've been feeling about it, and what's going to happen now for them and for you.
Wow. So
at that point, I feel like you're ready. You're done. So I would say definitely do that in a public space. Making sure that you're as safe and comfortable as possible.
Okay.
Maybe even having a friend there, waiting in the car, or in the background, just making sure you're safe if that's the case.
Okay.
But the most important thing is keep following through. Make sure that once you figure out this plan, if you enacted it, keep following through that plan, because there's going to be all that fog of the relationship and the manipulation, but you have to understand that at the end of the day, this was a manipulative relationship. Okay. Do not forget that.
Okay, so question. Have you heard of, you know about the bad boy trope, right? Where a lot of the women find that attractive and stuff. So in the previous episode, me and Shay was discussing how I saw the bad boy trope and how she saw it as a way of women going into those relationships knowingly trying to change the person. I mean, is that is that a form of manipulation? Because they know exactly how the guy is, but they try to change the person. Like, would you recommend that? And is that even
would I recommend it?
Good?
Absolutely not. I would never recommend something like that, and I'll tell you why. In a relationship, is supposed to be two whole people coming together. It's not half of a person coming together with a whole person.
So it's not like I'm missing my other half. Bro.
That's something I used to say that all the time, and now I'm grown up and I'm just like, ew, that's literally disgusting.
It is though. I mean, that's what.
No.
So okay, so would you say that we have like a bad, not a bad, but like a wrong impression of what a relationship is supposed to be like?
Yes, I would say it's completely distorted. Like when you think about like the movies, you're thinking about like, oh, you complete me.
Yes,
and,
you complete me.
The only way I am is because of you, and I'd be nothing without you. No.
Yes,
that
I'll
is
be nothing
such
without
a
you.
lie you're telling yourself.
Wow, why is it? Why is it
not.
such a lie though?
It is such a lie, and it's a lie because we can be whole people on our own. We don't need someone else to create that space for us. We're just, I feel like as a society, especially in America today, we're so scared of being alone. And I mean alone in the sense of alone with our thoughts. Alone as who we are as a person. Like some of us are so scared of working and having that awareness of ourselves that we'd rather be in a relationship than be alone.
Wow.
And that's a pretty heavy thing. That's such a heavy thing to have to deal with.
From what you've been able to study so far, would you say that people have two different ideas of a relationship? Or like in the relationship, there is the expected relationship versus the reality. So how do we reconcile the two? How do we not? Because when I go into a relationship, I kind of have like an expectation of what I want it to be like. But it's not usually that. So would you say that emotional manipulation actually is the result of people going to a relationship that they expected to come out one way, but they didn't, so now they're trying to change it into what they wanted it?
Yeah, most definitely. I think that it can definitely happen in some cases. I mean, it really just depends on the person, their significant other, and like what their expectations and goals are going into the relationship. There's certainly some cases where people are like, this is the kind of person I want, and I'm going to make sure that you fit into this mold for me. There's other people that are like, I really want to get married. This is my ideal relationship, and this is exactly how we're going to get there. And they will mold and change the person or the situation to make sure it fits.
Okay.
And that's a really sad thing to like see and to have to admit to, because I think we all do that at some point. You know, we all grow up with our own like preconceived notions about like, oh, this is how I want to date someone. This is how I want the relationship to go. This is how I want to get married. Of course, we all have that. But I think the most important thing to look back to is having that support system for yourself. Who are you talking to? Who are you reflecting with? To make sure that you're not like you're not head over heels and in over your head over this person, and you're not thinking about the relationship unrealistically at some point.
Okay, so one question I have though is, why does the manipulation even exist though in the relationship? Like why do people even feel the need to manipulate each other? If like, because I'm pretty sure that before you go into a relationship, like you would see into the person, like the person already has what you want, then you really need to like manipulate them or take, you know, like try to like take advantage of them. So what creates the need for like manipulation in relationships?
Yeah, most definitely. For me, off the top of my head, it stems back to two different things. Like, this person has always gotten what they've wanted, and so they've gotten used to like that reinforcement of like, I'm always going to be able to be this person and get away with it. So I'm going to continue doing that because no one is telling me otherwise or showing me otherwise. So there's that reinforcement principle. And the second, what's happened in their past? Have they gotten hurt? Have they gotten cheated on? Have they had any kind of abuse, either from family members or from significant others? Like, what's going on in their past that affects who they are now? And are they getting the help that they need to fix that? For some people, it's not. And it goes back to the idea, hurt people hurt people. Are you looking at yourself? What are you doing to be a better person? That is probably the biggest thing that you should be doing, like, as an everyday process.
Okay, so let's say that you do get yourself out of such relationship. What steps should you take in order to like heal from that relationship and make sure that it doesn't happen in the future?
Yeah, that's a good question.
And also,
I think,
what are some red flags that usually manipulative people have that you can look out for so that you don't get yourself in the same predicament? So it's a question.
Good,
Yeah.
good. Yeah. Okay. So for healing, for that question, honestly, the first thing that I go to, and not to like advocate for myself or anything, but is therapy something you want, or is therapy something you need? And I think that's like a totally fair question to ask.
So you say
And the
want
answer-
versus need?
Yes.
But okay,
I-
so
and I would-
tell us why. Why?
Yeah, I would definitely argue that yes to both, like you need it, but some people, like the manipulation that they go through is maybe at the beginning stages of it. So the minute that they cut out that relationship at the beginning stages, they're going to be okay. And they love themselves enough and are a whole person already to know the difference. So sometimes people don't need it.
Okay.
Sometimes people want it, and that's fair too. Sometimes they don't need either, and that's okay too. Yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah.
basically, so your state before you enter that relationship will determine how well you're able to handle the dissolving of that relationship.
Most definitely. I think like before the relationship and like also during the relationship. So are you growing as a person during that relationship as however long it lasts to know the differences for yourself?
Okay. Okay, then so now what are some signs that you should probably look out for before you go into a relationship if the person is manipulative or not?
Yeah. This one I did a little search too, just to kind of like make my thoughts flow a little bit more. And I'm thinking more about like early signs. Is this person controlling? You know, are they wanting to come at a certain time in a certain place? Are they starting to like isolate you from your friends, or like only wanting to hang out with you? Are they trying to control the friends that you have? Like, oh, I'm only allowed to hang out with girls now. I'm not allowed to hang out with my guy friends anymore. There's really subtle clues that are either, you know, kind of more unconscious, where you kind of have to like dig through them, but there's some that are really like explicit and they're like very in your face, where you're just like, wow, like this person, it ain't it. He's not it.
Okay, question.
Mm-hmm.
So back to the topic of, are they like alien, like, so making you go away from your friends? Do you believe that guys and girls can stay just friends platonically for long?
Another age-old question. This one I've always advocated yes for. Always
Yes?
advocated yes for.
Okay.
And I will tell you why.
Please do.
I think if there is very appropriate communication between like both parties, and that you're hanging out in very respectful ways, it can definitely work out. And I think like boys and girls, like, we need each other. I think it kind of goes back to a lot of the traditional sense of like getting that different perspective. I think we all need that in our lives, and that we find that source of like almost comfort and like disclosure from the opposite sex sometimes too. So I think that's very important to get.
But
And I
then
think
isn't your partner the opposite sex? Shouldn't they be like, isn't all you need is your partner?
Ooh. Most definitely not. This person, like your partner, is not like the end all be all. This person should never be like your everything.
Of the opposite sex, I'm talking about, you know? So all you need is your girlfriend. Because if you're mad, who you gonna talk to? Another guy? Or another girl who is just waiting for your relationship to end so they can, you know, slide in there, you know?
And to that, I would say not everybody is there to get with you.
Mm.
Some people definitely want to be your friend.
Wow. Okay. So you believe that it is possible with
I think so.
certain
I've always argued
boundaries.
for that. Yes, of course.
I wonder who's staying those boundaries, because I do not believe that it's gonna be like a 50-50 where they both sit down and like they set the boundaries equally.
Oh, 100%. And I think a lot of it is done like unconsciously. Like you kind of just like, you know what to do. It's like a social cue kind of thing. And of course, there's definitely going to be a lot of like examples where I'm just like, yeah, I could never be just friends with this person. That happens too, you know? But can it be done? Yes. Most definitely.
Some of the ways that you say that girlfriends manipulate their guy friends in relationship is verbally, right? And then you said that some of the ways that guys manipulate the girlfriends in relationship is to physical aggression. You could say something like that. But however, they all together manipulate each other, usually more or less for the same reasons.
I think so. Yeah.
Okay.
Most definitely.
And you also believe that having, so the amount of partner that you have in the beginning, or like if you have enough of it, it might have a negative effect in your future, especially if sex has been involved.
I think it's very possible, for sure. And I think that also just like kind of relates back to like knowing yourself as a person and being really grounded in who you are and what you want. Check yourself, basically.
Okay, so what do you think of the movement that pushes women to not care so much about how many people they sleep with? Because it's they don't believe it has any effect on them.
I think at the end of the day, it's a very personal decision that I'm not going to say you're wrong for or you're right for.
Okay.
I think, again, it comes with being grounded in who you are and what you think is right for you. If you have the emotional capacity for something like that, then that's what you have the emotional capacity for. I think at the end of the day, consent is the most important part. So being able to say yes to something or have the ability to say yes to something, that's probably the most important piece of that.
Okay, so when you say consent, can consent be manipulated?
Oh, 100%.
How
Most
so?
definitely. Especially in dating relationships. Because there is that extra pressure to want to please your partner, to want to love them the way that they want to be loved. So you're willing to bend and go out of your way and even, break to please this person because you want to show them some kind of love that you believe the love will be reciprocated back.
So if the love is then reciprocated back, then it's okay.
No. No.
It's not okay, but I mean you are getting it back, so
yeah, and I think that stems right back to manipulation, because the fact of the matter is you're bending to create this scenario for yourself, because ideally or normally you wouldn't say yes to it.
Yes, that's true.
You would actually say no. Yeah, it's difficult, and it's so difficult, especially in relationships, because of that extra pressure.
Wow. Okay, but you do believe that like in relationship, both partners should strive to please each other, right?
I would think so, yeah. And that comes a lot with like communication and understanding, what does it mean to have that kind of pleasure? What is pleasure on both ends to each other?
Okay, because for me, emotional manipulation usually happens when I feel like either one party isn't getting what they want, so they have to like manipulate themselves into getting it when it shouldn't have been that way, or like coerce somebody into doing something that they shouldn't have done.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, I definitely think that can happen. I think again, it depends on the situation and what their intentions are. So if they're not getting what they want, is it because of like external factors or internal factors? So are they not getting what they want because they're not being satisfied in their own life, or are they not getting what they want because like they aren't okay with themselves?
So we're talking about like insecurities. So how big does insecurity of the person plays into them manipulating you though?
Oh, it goes back to the idea of like whole person versus half a person. Yeah, it becomes like this leeching effect where like if you're not a whole person and you don't want to work on yourself, you're going to leech it out of somebody else. And that's when it gets so manipulative and potentially toxic for people.
Wow. So basically it's like if you're a full glass and your partner is like a half a glass, then they're going to be taking away from you, when in reality relationship should be adding to each other, having each other overflow.
Yeah, exactly. And you know what the sad thing is that when the relationship is over, that person is still half a glass because it's not even their own water.
Stop. Oh my god, that's so deep. Wow.
It's sad.
Wow. Well, thank you, Chacha, for those very, very deep insights on emotional manipulation in relationship. So you said that some people stay in the manipulative relationship because they consider like the pros and cons, and sometimes they see that the cons isn't as bad as it could be, and the pros are better than the cons, so they stay even though they technically shouldn't.
Yes. They weigh that like abuse as something so little and so minute that like the pros, like the benefits, are just like so much better. So let me just stay.
Okay. And you said that the best way for them to go about living that relationship is to seeking the help of a professional counselor or psychologist and go through a step. Can you reiterate the steps that you mentioned?
Yeah, definitely. I think it goes back to definitely seeking help, whether it's from a counselor, a trusted friend, an authority figure like the police or something like that. I would definitely recommend going to them for advice and just seeking help. Also, creating a safety plan. Who are you going to call in the event that something happens? Where are you going to go? In an emergency, where are you going to go and who are you going to call? So making sure to plan that out in your head so that if anything does happen, you will be safe. 'Cause that's the most important thing.
Okay. And you see that after the person has done that, after they have gotten themselves outside of the relationship, some step that they should take to heal from the relationship again.
Yeah. It's going back to the idea of kind of figuring out if therapy is something that you want or need right now. And if it isn't, identifying the triggers that you have from the past relationship or even from your previous life. What are the triggers for you and what can you do to make sure that you're protected and you're safe and you're comfortable moving forward in relationships.
Question.
Yeah.
Can two people from a formerly emotional, manipulative relationship get back together and make it work?
I think, although difficult, it is very possible that it could happen.
Should you even try?
I think it really depends on the people and the situation as well. What kind of abuse was it? How long did it occur? How often? How intense was it every time? Yeah, it really does depend on the strength of the couple.
Okay, makes sense.
And the person.
All right. Well, Chacha, thank you so much for coming into this episode.
Most definitely. I'm glad to be here.
So let's say somebody do want to gain the insight of psychology and some therapy. How would they go about contacting you if they want to ask you more questions or talk to you personally?
Yeah. I'm always open to questions and just wanting some general advice. You guys can reach out to me at my phone number and my email. I'm gonna give out my email and then we can kind of coordinate from there.
Yeah.
But my email is Chalita, CHALITA .ANTO@yahoo.com.
Okay.
So if you guys want to learn more, you have any questions, any comments, any concerns, let me know. I'm here for it.
All right, and I'll also put her email in the description below. So if you guys want to copy that and email her directly, then you guys can do so. Well, Chacha, thank you for your time. And any last thing that you want to say?
Yeah. One last thing. Honestly, at the end of the day, it comes down to just love yourself and take care of yourself. Do what's best for you, and the rest will follow.
So self-love, huh?
Most self-love.
Wow.
Biggest lesson of all.
All right then. Well, thank you so much for coming, and make sure that you guys go check the description of the podcast so you guys can find her email if you guys have any questions. And I'll see you guys in the next episode. Goodbye.
Bye.